sun bathed the Valencorp headquarters in a golden glow as the morning rush began. From the outside, Henry and Alicia looked like the ultimate power couple, CEO and COO of one of the fastest-growing luxury tech companies in West Africa. Alicia, with her natural elegance and sharp intuition, complemented Henry's charisma and calculated mind perfectly. Together, they built Valen from a tiny startup into a market leader. Magazines often called them the Golden Duo, both attractive, successful, and seemingly unbreakable. At corporate events, they moved like a well-choreographed dance. Alicia would speak in concise brilliance, while Henry closed deals with a charming grin. But beneath the surface, there was a shift, a quiet cracking in the foundation that neither of them acknowledged out loud. Alicia noticed it first in the little things. Henry stopped waiting for her to get home before dinner. He was constantly at meetings, late into the night. His phone, once left lying face up, was now clutched tightly or kept face down. He no longer asked her opinion on company decisions, things they used to discuss in bed, laughing and dreaming. But Alicia, ever the composed strategist, didn't panic. She filed every moment away in silence. There was no confrontation yet. Just a growing sense that the man she married had slowly become a stranger sitting across the table. At their anniversary dinner, she raised her glass with a soft smile and whispered, "To us." Henry clinked it with a distracted nod, replying flatly, "To Valen." It wasn't just the love that was changing, it was the loyalty, and Alicia could feel it. The silence between Alicia and Henry had grown into a third presence in their home. It lingered in the bedroom, where they once curled into each other after long days, now divided by a cold stretch of sheets. Henry would slide into bed after midnight, sometimes freshly showered, other times reeking faintly of an unfamiliar cologne. Alicia stopped asking where he'd been. His answers had turned vague, like smoke slipping through her fingers. Morning routines became transactions. "You're out early," she'd comment softly as he grabbed his keys. "The back-to-back meetings," he'd mutter, not sparing her a glance. Her instincts screamed, but her dignity wouldn't let her chase him. One night, Alicia came home to find the living room dim, a half-empty wine glass on the table, red lipstick she didn't wear stained the rim. She picked it up, inspecting it like a detective at a crime scene. No explanation came when Henry walked in minutes later, his shirt untucked and hair slightly disheveled. He froze when he saw the glass in her hand. "You had company," she asked, voice calm but razor-edged. He scoffed and waved dismissively. David stopped by for a quick strategy chat. He had his date with him. Relax. Alicia nodded slowly, placing the glass back down. But something inside her shifted then. Not out of rage, but resolve. She wasn't going to beg. She would observe, record, and wait. The betrayal she sensed was no longer an if, but a when. Bernice was magnetic. Tall, confident, and laced with ambition, she strode through Valencourt's corridors like she already owned the place. To the rest of the staff, she was just another rising star, a junior strategist with big ideas and bold heels. But Alicia watched her closely during meetings. The way Bernice leaned just a little too close to Henry when showing him slides. The hand on his arm that lingered half a second too long. The laughter, loud and throaty, at jokes that weren't that funny. Alicia wasn't the only one who noticed. Vivian, Alicia's friend and head of PR, leaned over during one meeting and whispered, "She's not even subtle anymore." Alicia only smiled, hiding the tight knot in her chest. "Neither is he," she replied, eyes locked on Henry. It became unbearable when Alicia walked into Henry's office one evening and found Bernice perched on the edge of his desk, their voices low and conspiratorial. They pulled apart when they saw her. Henry straightened immediately. "Alicia," he said too quickly, "we were just going over campaign ideas." Bernice added sweetly, "It's all very exciting. Henry thinks the new luxury series should reflect a younger vibe." Alicia held her gaze. "And you represent that, I assume?" Bernice smiled without blinking. "I like to think so." That night, Alicia lay awake next to her husband, staring at the ceiling while he slept soundly beside her. His betrayal wasn't complete yet, but it had begun. And when he crossed the line, he wouldn't even realize how far she'd already moved away from him in her heart. Henry began slowly unraveling Alicia's presence at Valencorp without ever uttering a single word about divorce or distance. It started with her being left out of key strategy meetings. Then her name was quietly removed from internal documents she'd helped author. The final sting came when Bernice, still technically junior staff, was introduced in a pitch meeting as the lead visionary behind Valen's newest expansion initiative. Alicia sat there, stunned, as the board clapped politely and Henry smiled proudly. No one dared meet Alicia's eyes. When she approached him afterward, keeping her voice composed, she asked, "Is this what we're doing now? Erasing me from the company I built." He didn't flinch. "Don't make this emotional, Alicia. Business is evolving." The next week, Henry formally launched the Next Gen division, Valen's attempt to target younger markets, and made Bernice its head. In the press release, Bernice was quoted as saying, "Valen needs fresh energy and bold vision to lead in this new era." Alicia read it in her office, her hands trembling but her face blank. Vivian barged in shortly after. "He didn't even run this by the board," she said, outraged. "This is war." But Alicia only folded the newspaper carefully and whispered, "No, this is exposure." She knew Henry believed he was rising, but she could see he was burning bridges behind him without noticing. Bernice, for all her charm, had neither Alicia's depth nor understanding of Valen's soul. But Alicia wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. For now, she would continue to play the role of the silent queen until the court collapsed under its own betrayal. Alicia had learned long ago that confrontation didn't always win wars. Observation did. So she watched. She watched Henry come home late, watched him tuck his phone beneath the pillow, watched him send texts in the bathroom with the water running. One morning, while folding laundry, she noticed a receipt in the pocket of his blazer, a boutique hotel downtown, a champagne room service bill, signed with a heart next to the guest's name. She sat down with the receipt in her lap and took a long, shaky breath. Her heart wasn't broken, it was simply catching up to what her mind had already accepted. She didn't cry, not yet. Instead, she placed the receipt inside a brown envelope, locked it in her desk, and made a mental note. She wasn't collecting pain, she was collecting proof. Henry noticed the shift in her, but he couldn't place it. She was still polite, still composed, but no longer present. She didn't ask about his day or remind him of meetings. When he came home, she simply nodded. During dinner, he'd fill the silence with talk of expansion and campaigns, and Alicia would nod occasionally, sipping her wine with distant poise. One night, he asked sharply, "Is something wrong?" Alicia smiled softly. "You seem busy enough to answer that yourself." The jab was gentle, but it landed hard. He narrowed his eyes. "If there's something you want to say it." She shook her head. "Not yet." And with that, she stood, kissed him on the cheek, and went to bed. She had no intention of playing detective. She already knew the truth. What she was doing now was preparing for her exit. Alicia waited until the end of a quiet Sunday afternoon before confronting him. The house was still, the air heavy with quiet tension. Henry was lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone. She walked in with steady steps, holding the boutique receipt. "You forgot this in your jacket," she said calmly, handing it to him. His face twitched the moment he saw it, but he recovered quickly. "That's nothing," he scoffed. "A client dinner." Bernice was there too, yes, but others were present. Alicia didn't flinch. Did the heart next to her name come from the client too? Henry sat up, irritation flaring. "Alicia, you're twisting things. You've always had this paranoid streak. You can't stand seeing another woman rise." That line sliced through the room like glass. Alicia's jaw clenched, but her voice remained even. "She's not rising. You're raising her and burying me in the process." Henry threw the receipt aside, standing now. "You're being dramatic. You're insecure, Alicia. You always need to feel in control." Her eyes sharpened. "Control. I built this company with you. I sacrificed my time, my body, my dreams. And now I'm paranoid?" He turned away, muttering, "You're exhausting." That broke something inside her, not because it was cruel, but because it confirmed what she'd feared. He didn't love her anymore, and worse, he didn't even respect her. As he walked upstairs, Alicia remained still on the couch, her heart pounding, her face blank. In that moment, she knew this marriage was not just strained. It was over. She would not stay and beg. She would wait, she would endure, and then she would rise. Quietly and without warning. The grand gala for Valen's newest luxury line was a spectacle: crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, and an entire media wall adorned with Valen logos and press lights. Alicia arrived dressed in deep emerald silk, her elegance effortless, her composure airtight. She expected to stand by Henry's side as co-founder, as always. But when the stage lights flared and Henry took the mic, he cleared his throat and said, "Tonight, I'm proud to introduce the future of Valen's innovation. The visionary behind our new product line, Bernice Mensa." Applause erupted. Alicia froze. Bernice stepped onto the stage in a figure-hugging gold gown, beaming as though she hadn't just bulldozed over another woman's life. Cameras flashed. Alicia stood among the crowd, expression unreadable. Vivian whispered at her side, "Did you know she was leading the campaign?" Alicia shook her head once. "No, I was the one who conceptualized that launch." She watched Henry place his hand on Bernice's lower back, casual, familiar. Alicia's stomach twisted, but she stood her ground, even as murmurs rippled around her. After the event, she approached Henry calmly backstage. "You didn't mention she was presenting." He barely looked at her. It was a last-minute call. Bernice has a better grasp of the demographic. Alicia stared at him, her voice steady. "That demographic was my idea. I built it." He gave a half smile. "Then take credit for being a good foundation." That night, Alicia sat in her car, parked in the darkness, watching her reflection in the rearview mirror. The Alicia who had once clung to love was gone. The woman staring back now, she had nothing left to lose. The boardroom was ice cold that morning, not from temperature, but from the energy. Alicia entered, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor, a folder of quarterly reports in hand. Henry sat at the head of the table, Bernice beside him in a fitted navy suit, looking smugly confident. Alicia noticed her own seat had been moved, replaced with a smaller chair off to the side. She said nothing. Once everyone settled, Henry stood and cleared his throat. "We're restructuring Valen core leadership to meet new market demands," he announced. Effective immediately, Alicia will transition into a consulting role. Bernice will step in as Executive Innovation Director. The room froze, a few gasps, some exchanged glances. No one looked directly at Alicia. She didn't blink, didn't move. "A consulting role?" she asked, voice low but firm. "After 15 years of building this company from scratch?" Henry's eyes didn't waver. "We need dynamic leadership to stay competitive. This is what's best for the brand." Bernice chimed in sweetly. "Of course, Alicia's legacy will always be part of Valen's DNA." That sentence felt like a death sentence. Alicia glanced at the board members, cowards, every one of them. No one spoke in her defense. Vivian sat stiffly in her seat, red with restrained fury. After the meeting, as Alicia collected her things, she turned to Henry. This was never about the company, was it? He buttoned his jacket, cool and unaffected. "It's just business, Alicia. You always said emotions don't belong in the boardroom." She gave him a long look, then simply said, "You're right, which is why I won't cry here." And then, without drama, without breaking stride, she walked out. For the first time, she felt truly free. The house felt like a museum that night, beautiful, expensive, but hollow. Alicia moved through the room slowly, her fingers brushing across polished furniture, photographs, glass vases. Every memory felt like it belonged to a different lifetime. She packed in silence. Just the essentials: her laptop, a few favorite clothes, her journals. She left behind the designer bags, the wedding album, the joint credit cards. In the master bedroom, she paused at her side of the closet and slid a small envelope between two shirts. It contained the boutique receipt, a copy of the boardroom recording, and a note that read, "This isn't revenge. It's release." By dawn, Alicia was gone. No arguments, no letters, no explanation. Her phone was turned off, her email deactivated. Even Vivian, her closest ally, received only a cryptic voice message. "I'll be okay. Don't look for me." Henry woke up to an empty house and assumed she was sulking somewhere, nursing her pride. He didn't even check the closet. Bernice arrived later with breakfast and a grin, slipping into Alicia's seat at the kitchen island like she belonged there. "She'll come back," Henry muttered over coffee, half smirking. "She always does," Bernice laughed. "And if she doesn't?" He shrugged. "Then we move on. Business has no time for drama." But miles away, Alicia sat by a wide window in a quiet airport lounge, staring at her boarding pass. She wasn't running. She was reclaiming herself. And this time, she wouldn't be coming back for anyone. The plane touched down in Cape Town under a crisp blue sky. Alicia stepped out into a world that didn't know her, didn't expect anything from her, and wouldn't define her by her past. She wore sunglasses and a long white coat, her suitcase rolling behind her like a silent companion. She checked into a modest boutique hotel near the coast under the name Leah Morris, a name she'd once written in a college short story when imagining a woman who had nothing and built everything. No one there knew she had once run a multi-million-dollar company, and she preferred it that way. She spent her first night by the window, sipping Rubos tea and watching waves crash against the shore. The silence no longer felt suffocating, it felt sacred. She didn't check the news, didn't search for updates on Valencorp. Henry could enjoy his moment. Bernice could play her part. Let them think she was licking her wounds in shame. Let them write her off. That was the gift. In her journal, she wrote only 4 words. Let the silence build. She had no plan yet, no empire to run. Just space and a burning ember deep inside her, waiting to be sparked. She had vanished from their world. But soon she would reappear in another. Unstoppable, unapologetic, unforgettable. The coastal breeze in Cape Town had a strange kind of clarity to it, like it knew how to clear the remnants of a life that no longer served you. Alicia spent her first few weeks getting to know the city as quietly as possible. She rented a small apartment tucked above a flower shop owned by an elderly woman named Thando. Didn't ask questions and welcomed Alicia's silence with warm tea and hand-picked proteas. During the day, Alicia wandered the artsy business district, visiting co-working spaces, listening to young entrepreneurs pitch ideas in cafes, and slowly, cautiously, letting her instincts awaken. She needed to make money, yes, but more than that, she needed purpose. She began consulting discreetly, using her deep knowledge of product strategy and branding to help small African startups position themselves better in the global market. One evening, while advising a young Ghanaian woman named Kizi on how to rebrand her skincare business, Alicia caught herself doing something unfamiliar, laughing. It surprised her how natural it felt. She looked up from her notes and said, "You know, I used to live in boardrooms. I forgot what it was like to work with people who actually listen." Kezi tilted her head curiously. "You talk like you've escaped something big." Alicia's eyes softened. "I did. There was no need to say more." That night, Alicia walked home feeling lighter. She wasn't anyone's wife, wasn't tied to a scandal, wasn't haunted by her past title. She was just a woman rebuilding herself in a foreign city, brick by honest brick. And for the first time in years, she wasn't pretending to be okay. She actually was. Alicia met David at a modest pitch event held at a beachfront hotel. He was there as a keynote speaker, offering capital to underdog businesses with promising potential. Tall, silver-bearded, and carrying himself with an old-world charm, David noticed Alicia not because she spoke, but because she listened differently. After the event, he found her on the terrace, alone, scribbling something in a leather notebook. "You don't strike me as someone here to win funding," he said casually. She looked up, startled, then smiled. "I'm here to find what's worth building." He chuckled. "Aren't we all?" They ended up talking for 2 hours. Not just about business, but about reinvention, about failure, about fire. Over the next few weeks, they kept crossing paths, sometimes coincidentally, sometimes not. David eventually invited Alicia to help him evaluate pitches from startups, curious about her strategic eye. She agreed, and they quickly became a formidable team. David's instinct for value, Alicia's precision for brand identity. One afternoon over lunch, David leaned back and asked, "What's your story, really?" Alicia stirred her tea slowly. "It's the kind where the princess doesn't end up in the tower. She burns it down and builds a mansion instead." He laughed, eyes twinkling. "I'd invest in that story." There was no flirtation, no rush, just respect. And Alicia appreciated how David never pried further. He saw her not as a broken woman trying to heal, but as a brilliant mind rising from silence. For the first time since her world fell apart, she felt seen. The past tried to visit Alicia sometimes, in dreams, in headlines she skipped, in voices she thought she recognized on the street. But she never looked back. She built her days with routine, morning walks, client meetings, deep work sessions, and quiet evenings. Her consulting portfolio expanded quickly. Her strategies, though discreet, led to real results. Word began to spread among the entrepreneurial underground. There's a woman named Leah who's changing businesses in 3 months flat. She smiled when she heard it. She liked being Leah. Leah had no ex-husband, no public disgrace, no company stolen from under her. Leah had only the future. One night, Thandau handed Alicia a package that had arrived with no return address. Inside was a single magazine, Business West Africa, with Henry and Bernice on the cover. The headline read, "The New Power Duo of Valen Corp." Alicia stared at it for a moment, then tossed it into the recycling bin without reading the article. Thandau watched her silently. "People like them chase the spotlight," she said gently. "But you're building light." Alicia nodded, her throat tight with unshed emotion. Later that night, she wrote in her journal, "Let them shine. I'll outlast them." She didn't need validation. She had clarity. And with every step forward, Alicia knew one truth above all else. She didn't leave her old life behind. She shed it, like dead skin, like a cage unlocked. And what remained? A woman who would never be caged again. It began as a late-night scribble in Alicia's notebook, a sketch of a sleek, modern device that merged wellness tech with luxury African-inspired aesthetics. At first, she told herself it was just a creative release. But as she refined the concept night after night, the spark she thought she'd buried flickered to life again. Alicia envisioned a line of high-end, culturally rooted tech accessories, smart rings with engraved Yoruba proverbs, meditation earbuds lined in gold-toned tribal patterns, and skincare tools embedded with holistic African healing principles. It was unlike anything on the market, sophisticated, soulful, and disruptive. "It's audacious," she whispered to herself one night, staring at her sketches with glowing eyes. "And it's exactly what I want to build." When she shared the idea with David over lunch the next day, he paused, set down his drink, and stared at her. "This isn't a business pitch," he said slowly. "This is a movement waiting to happen." Alicia grinned. "It's bold, I know." He shook his head. "It's genius. But you can't just consult on this. You have to own it, fully." That terrified her more than she expected. Ownership meant exposure, and exposure meant being seen again, not as Leah, but as Alicia. But the more she thought about it, the more it thrilled her. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about proving Henry wrong anymore. It was about building something that was entirely hers. And this time, no one would steal it. No one would overwrite her name. Alicia spent the next month assembling a pitch deck that was both clean and emotionally gripping. David connected her with a few low-key investors he trusted, people who respected quiet brilliance over showmanship. The pitch day arrived in a sunlit hall overlooking the ocean. Alicia wore an ivory suit, no flash, just strength. She stood in front of 6 skeptical but curious investors and laid her vision bare. "This isn't just technology," she told them. "It's culture. It's elegance. It's Africa leading instead of following." Her voice never trembled. When she finished, the room fell quiet for a beat too long. Then came the nods. Not dramatic applause, but understanding. Respect. One by one, hands went up with questions, not doubts. After the session, David approached her with a grin that reached his eyes. "You're not hiding anymore," he said. Alicia exhaled deeply, her heart racing with cautious joy. "I didn't think I could still feel this. Alive." 2 days later, the funding came through. Not from all 6 investors, but from 4, and that was enough. Alicia returned to her small apartment, opened a bottle of wine, and stood on her balcony watching the waves. She didn't call anyone, didn't post it, didn't scream. Instead, she whispered to herself, "We begin here." That night, she laid out a timeline, scribbled goals on her walls, and gave her vision a name that made her smile through tears. Alive. A declaration, a rebirth. A promise to herself that she was never gone, just becoming. The name came to Alicia during a walk through a local art market. She paused at a vendor's stall where a necklace spelled out the word "live" in golden script. Something stirred inside her, a need to take that word and reclaim it, twist it into something uniquely hers. That night, she rearranged the letters, stared at the result, and wrote it in thick black ink across a blank page. Alive. It wasn't just a clever acronym, it was an echo of her identity, Alicia Lives. That became her company's heartbeat. Everything about Alive would reflect resilience, cultural pride, and the elegance of survival. The branding took shape quickly, minimalist black and gold aesthetics, rooted messaging, and storytelling layered into every product launch. She built the team quietly, hiring young, brilliant designers and developers from across the continent, many of whom had been overlooked by the flashier startups in Europe and the US. This isn't about competition, she told them in their first team call. It's about declaration. We're not trying to catch up, we're leading now. They called her LM in meetings, short for Leah Morris, never questioning her background. Only David and her branding director, Ayanda, knew the full truth. When are you going to step into the spotlight? Ayanda asked one day. Alicia smiled. When the world's ready to see a woman who didn't just survive betrayal, but built an empire from it. She wasn't rushing the reveal, not yet. For now, she would let Alive grow, thrive, and whisper her story in every product it touched. Quiet power was still power, and soon it would be undeniable. Alive's launch was intentionally quiet, no celebrity endorsements, no aggressive advertising. Alicia relied instead on whispered influence, niche tech reviews, and carefully seeded word of mouth. The brand's first three products, the Luma Ring, the Saudi earbuds, and the Amma skincare wand, sold out within 2 weeks. Customers didn't just use them. They posted about them, wrote essays about the fusion of culture and technology, the subtle power in their design. Alive wasn't selling gadgets, it was telling stories. By the third month, Alicia was fielding emails from luxury retailers in Dubai, London, and Lagos. One investor called it Afrofuturism dipped in grace. Still, Alicia remained in the shadows, signing emails as LM, declining interviews, and letting Ayanda handle all public-facing tasks. David often teased her. You know, people are starting to think LM is some mysterious male tech genius from Silicon Valley, he joked over coffee one afternoon. Alicia sipped her drink with a sly smile. Good. Let them underestimate me a little longer. He nodded approvingly. There's something poetic about building a legacy where your silence speaks louder than their applause. Meanwhile, within the startup world, Alive was quietly setting new standards. Competitors began mimicking its aesthetic. Media outlets started speculating. But Alicia didn't care about the noise. Her focus was steady. She remembered the day Henry cut her name from Valen's leadership profile. And now, without a single press release, she was shaping a global brand whose name carried her spirit in every syllable. And this time, no one could erase it. It was a regular Thursday when Alicia opened her tablet to review supplier contracts, only to be met with an unexpected headline that took up the entire screen. Valen Corp faces sharp decline amid lawsuits, product delays. Her breath caught. The photo beneath the headline showed Henry and Bernice at a tech conference. Henry looked tired, Bernice forced a smile. The article detailed several failed product launches, supply chain issues, and internal HR complaints. It mentioned declining investor confidence, even hinted at potential buyout rumors. Alicia stared at it for a long moment before quietly closing the tab. She didn't smile, didn't gloat, but something cold and steady settled in her chest, confirmation. The empire they betrayed her for was crumbling, just as she had predicted. That night, Ayanda burst into Alicia's office holding a printed copy of the article. Have you seen this? They're spiraling. Alicia didn't look up from her laptop. It was inevitable. Ayanda sat down, breathless. I mean, you could finish them. One statement from you, one reveal. You could bury them with a whisper. Alicia finally looked up, her face unreadable. No, let the storm bury them. I won't lift a finger. Ayanda blinked. Why? Alicia leaned back in her chair. Because I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in building something they can never reach, even in their prime. Her voice held no venom, just power. That night, as the news spread across the continent, Henry and Bernice had no idea that the woman silently watching their fall was the same one they once replaced. And Alicia, she had bigger plans than revenge. She had her eyes on immortality. Vivian had been trying to track Alicia down for weeks. The moment she saw Alive's products online, clean, striking, and eerily reminiscent of Alicia's taste, she knew. And when she finally reached David through mutual circles, she didn't hesitate. Tell her Vivian wants one conversation. Just one. Alicia hesitated when she got the message. She hadn't spoken to Vivian since the day she walked out of the boardroom. But something inside her whispered, "It's time." They met at a quiet wine bar in Cape Town, Vivian walking in with cautious eyes and a heart full of loyalty. The moment she saw Alicia, she broke into tears. "I thought you were gone for good." Alicia hugged her tightly, a rare crack in her composed armor. They sat for hours, wine untouched, as Vivian poured out the chaos unfolding at Valen, mass resignations, board infighting, Bernice's failed campaigns, Henry's desperate attempts to regain investors. "It's bad, Alicia. They're circling the drain," Vivian said. "But here's the thing, you could save it. You're the only one who ever truly built it." Alicia shook her head slowly. "I didn't build Valen to save it now. I built it to survive it, and I did." Vivian leaned in, her voice quiet. "You're not done, and deep down you know it." Alicia didn't answer. But that night, for the first time, she stood on her balcony and looked at the horizon not as a place to escape to, but as something she might reclaim. Not out of spite, but to remind the world exactly who she was. It happened on a Tuesday morning, unremarkable, until Alicia saw the live-streamed investor forum flashing across her screen. Valen Corp had gone public with a desperate plea. Henry, dressed in an ill-fitted navy suit, stood before a thinning crowd of shareholders. His voice lacked its usual charm, his smile strained. "We are seeking new partnerships to restore stability," he said, his tone tight. Bernice stood to his left, avoiding eye contact with the cameras. The chat bar on the live stream was brutal. "Where is the innovation?" "No vision." "Time to sell." Alicia watched in silence, her fingers resting on her teacup. The man who once dismissed her without hesitation now stood publicly begging for a lifeline. And yet, her expression didn't change. Later that afternoon, David found her sitting by the glass wall of their Cape Town office, eyes still fixed on the paused image of Henry's hollow speech. "You watched it?" he asked. She nodded. "It's happening faster than I expected." David pulled out a chair. "That company is circling the drain. And it's not just a business failure, it's poetic justice." Alicia turned to him, voice measured. "Do you think I should take it back?" David didn't hesitate. "Only if you want to. Not because they deserve it. Only if it serves your legacy." Alicia leaned back and looked at the skyline. There was no vengeance in her anymore, only vision. And for the first time, she was no longer running from what had been taken. She was calculating what was now hers to reclaim. Later that week, David approached her with an offer. "Valen's shares are dropping hard. I have a friend who owns a shell fund acquiring small percentages. With your go-ahead, we could start buying into Valen quietly." Alicia considered it carefully. "You want to buy them out?" He nodded. "Eventually, yes, but no headlines. No fingerprints, just leverage." Alicia paused for a long time before answering. "If I do this, it has to be me who walks in when it's over." "Not Leah, me," David raised his brows. "Then we do it your way. Personal. Precise." Alicia opened her laptop, pulled up Valen's stock reports, and whispered, "Let's begin." It wasn't about getting back at Henry. It was about restoring her name, her legacy, and everything they had erased. The takeover plan was simple in strategy but ruthless in execution. Within a week, Alicia's investment group, operating under three-layered shell corporations, began quietly acquiring shares. They made no noise, no press, no attention, and with every share purchased, Henry and Bernice unknowingly handed Alicia a piece of the empire they stole. "How poetic," Ayanda remarked as they reviewed the numbers one night. "They're drowning, and you're buying the water." Alicia smiled faintly but said nothing. Her heart wasn't light, it was focused. Every move she made now wasn't emotional. It was strategic. And when the final piece fell into place, she wouldn't come in loud or angry. She'd walk through the same doors they once closed on her and open them wide with power they'd never again be able to take. Over the next several weeks, Alicia's team secured enough of Valen's shares to become its largest stakeholder without anyone suspecting. The company was too distracted by financial chaos to notice. Henry and Bernice scrambled to hold board members together, juggling damage control and dwindling partnerships. Meetings grew tense. Staff morale dropped. Rumors swirled about layoffs. But the real shift happened during a late-night emergency board call. One of the elder shareholders, unaware of Alicia's involvement, announced a stunning development. There's been a significant buy-up in the last 10 days. One party now holds nearly 39% of our stock. Henry froze. Who? He asked. A firm named Mora Holdings, came the reply. Bernice's face went pale. The next morning, Alicia sat with David on the balcony of her coastal villa, laptop open to the live transcript of the meeting. They're panicking, he said. Alicia sipped her espresso calmly. They should be. Ayanda joined them minutes later, eyes gleaming. The final acquisition document is ready for your signature. With this, you take control of Valen Corp. Alicia paused, pen in hand. The moment stretched. Are you ready? David asked. Alicia nodded slowly. I was born ready. I just had to remember who I was. And with a single stroke of her pen, she claimed the very company they had stolen from her. Not with a fight, not with screams, but with precision. Quiet power, undeniable authority. And no one, not Henry, not Bernice, not the world, saw it coming. Bernice stood in the executive restroom, staring at herself in the mirror as her hand trembled slightly. The office was quieter these days, like the building itself was holding its breath. Meetings had become fragmented, and half the directors no longer looked her in the eye. That morning, Henry had barked at her over a failed product prototype and snapped, "We need solutions, not style." She bit her tongue but felt her grip on power slipping. Worse, the name Mora Holdings had begun circulating in hushed tones, its mysterious acquisition trail raising eyebrows. "You think it's a hostile takeover?" she whispered to Henry later in his office. He shrugged, rubbing his temple. "I don't know, but someone's bleeding us dry, and they're smart enough to stay hidden." That night, Bernice opened her private laptop and tried to track the firm's ownership, only to hit encrypted walls and disconnected trails. She called an old contact from her time in law school. "Find me who's behind Mora Holdings," she ordered. "I don't care what it costs." But even as she spoke the words, a knot formed in her stomach. Something about this didn't feel like a corporate ambush. It felt personal. Henry, meanwhile, was too buried in numbers to notice her unraveling. "If we don't stop this," she said to him with growing fear, "we're going to lose everything." Henry shot her a glare. "We? Or me?" The room turned cold. Bernice realized then that the alliance between them had never been real. It was only ever useful. And now, neither of them were useful to each other anymore. The email came on a quiet afternoon, its subject line simple, from Henry. Alicia stared at it for a long while before opening it. "Alicia, I know this may be unwelcome, but I'm asking you to meet. Not for the past, for the company. Valen is in trouble. We're being cornered, and I need your help." The words were a clumsy mix of guilt, pride, and desperation. There was no mention of Bernice. No apology. Just panic cloaked in professionalism. Alicia read it once, then again. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then she picked up her phone and called David. "He's reaching," she said. David exhaled. "Then it's time. Let him see what reaching actually looks like." She didn't reply to the email. Instead, she contacted the board's legal liaison and scheduled an official shareholders meeting under her rights as majority stakeholder. No drama, no theatrics, just process. Quiet power in motion. A few days later, Henry received the board calendar invite. The listed facilitator made him blink. Alicia M. Adeyemi, Executive Principal, Mora Holdings. He felt the breath leave his body. That night, he stormed into the office and confronted Bernice. "You said she disappeared," he yelled. Bernice paled. "I didn't know. Thought she was. Gone," he spat. "She's not gone, Bernice. She's about to walk into this building and remind us who built it." Bernice collapsed into her chair, eyes wide. For the first time in months, Henry felt what Alicia had felt the day she walked out. Complete, blinding humiliation. And she hadn't even entered the room yet. The air inside the Valen Core conference room was stiff with anticipation. Every seat was filled. The directors whispered among themselves, side-glancing at Henry and Bernice, who sat side by side, pale and silent. Then the glass doors opened. Alicia stepped in, flanked by David and Ayanda. She wore a custom black suit with gold thread embroidery, simple, regal, undeniable. No one needed introductions. Even those who had never met her knew immediately who she was. Henry stood instinctively, his voice catching. Alicia, she held up a hand. Mr. Adeyemi, please sit. It wasn't cold, it wasn't cruel. It was command. She took her place at the head of the table, opened a sleek folder, and began. As of this week, I hold controlling shares of Valen Corp under Mora Holdings. I've called this meeting to initiate a leadership transition that reflects our original founding values. A stunned silence followed. Bernice's lips parted, but no sound came. Alicia continued without glancing at either of them. Effective immediately, Henry Adeyemi will be relieved of his duties as CEO. Bernice Mensa's role is hereby dissolved. I thank you both for your service. The board remained frozen. Alicia paused, then looked directly at them for the first time. Any objections? Not a word, not a hand. Only the weight of reckoning settling in the room. She closed her folder, stood, and nodded. Then it's done. And just like that, Alicia didn't reclaim her seat. She replaced the entire table. Not out of revenge, but because power, when patient, always returns to its rightful owner. The press release dropped just before noon. It wasn't dramatic, just bold enough to shift the air. Valen Corp announces leadership transition. Alicia M. Adeyemi named new CEO and majority shareholder. Attached was a sleek portrait of Alicia, not the ghost they assumed vanished, but a reborn force. Elegant, powerful, unapologetically poised. Within minutes, it was trending. Social media exploded. Headlines read, "She's back. The Queen reclaims her throne." Staff at Valen stared at their phones, stunned. Those who once looked past Alicia now whispered her name with reverence. Bernice locked herself in her office. Henry canceled all meetings. The empire they hijacked now stood under the very name they tried to erase. And it wasn't just the return, it was the way Alicia came back. Not with noise, but with grace that echoed louder than any scandal. At the first town hall meeting, Alicia stepped onto the stage to a standing ovation. Cameras flashed, phones rose. She smiled once, then lifted the mic. I won't talk about the past, not today. We all know how we got here. A murmur of agreement. But here's what matters now. We rebuild with clarity, with culture, and with courage. Her voice was calm, yet firm enough to silence the room. She acknowledged key staff, promised restructuring with dignity, and ended with a simple statement. I'm not back because I was wronged. I'm back because I belong. That line was quoted in every headline the next morning. David sent her a single text. That wasn't a comeback. That was a coronation. And Alicia, now seated in her rightful place, smiled not at revenge fulfilled, but at a chapter fully rewritten. The press waited outside Valen's gates for hours, cameras lined like soldiers. When Alicia finally emerged with her team, there was no chaotic frenzy, only the slow hush of awe. She stopped briefly at the podium. No statements today, she said kindly. There's too much work to be done. When a reporter shouted, "What do you say to those who betrayed you?" Alicia turned, leveled her gaze, and replied, "I thank them." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "For what?" someone else asked. "For reminding me that I never needed validation to build something timeless." With that, she entered her waiting car, her presence leaving a trail more commanding than any shouted declaration ever could. Inside the company, her leadership felt like air returning to a suffocating room. Departments once on the verge of collapse found rhythm again. Team heads who had considered leaving now sent emails asking for meetings with Ms. Adeyemi. Henry, now stripped of all titles, tried one last time to reach her in the hallway. "Alicia, can we talk?" She turned briefly, expression unreadable. "We already did. You just weren't listening then." He swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to destroy everything." She tilted her head slightly. "You didn't destroy it. You just gave me space to rebuild it my way." Bernice left quietly the next week. No farewell party, no applause. Just a short memo and an empty desk. And Alicia, she never once raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her existence was the loudest answer of all. By the end of the month, Alicia was everywhere. Not because she chased the spotlight, but because the spotlight couldn't ignore her anymore. Her face graced magazine covers with titles like The Architect of Her Own Empire and Elegance in Execution. Ali V, her tech brand, became the gold standard for culturally rooted innovation, and was now merging with Valen under her vision. In interviews, Alicia never spoke about Henry or Bernice by name. "I think what matters isn't who tried to stop you," she said once during a live panel, "but what you chose to become when they did." That quote was printed on t-shirts, retweeted by celebrities, and etched onto posters in co-working spaces across Africa. Meanwhile, old allies came calling. Brands that once turned her down now requested collaborations. She declined many. "I'm not here to prove anything," she told Ayanda. "I'm here to build the future on my terms." Even competitors began shifting their language. Terms like inclusive luxury and cultural elegance were suddenly trending. But Alicia didn't follow trends. She created them. One editor wrote, "Alicia Adeyemi didn't just return, she rewrote the narrative of resilience, with silence as her sword and vision as her shield." And in every interview, every headline, her voice remained steady, never bitter, never boastful, just certain. She had become what most only dreamt of being, undeniably unshakable. It was late evening when Henry requested a private meeting. Alicia hesitated before agreeing, not out of sentiment, but because there was a certain power in facing the past when you no longer feared it. They met in her new office, minimalist, sharp, with an uninterrupted view of the skyline she now owned. Henry entered slowly, smaller than she remembered him, not in stature but in presence. "You look different," he said, voice tight. Alicia sat across from him, calm as ever. "No, I just stopped shrinking for anyone." Silence hung for a beat before Henry exhaled. "I didn't come to argue. I came to say I was wrong. About everything. About you." His eyes were red, but she saw no tears, just regret too late to matter. "I destroyed something I didn't know how to value," he continued. "I thought I was choosing freedom, but I only chose chaos." Alicia leaned back in her chair, folding her hands in her lap. "You didn't destroy me, Henry. You freed me. Just didn't realize that until I walked away." He lowered his gaze, nodding. "I don't expect forgiveness." She stood, walking toward the window, then turned to him. "Good, because I gave that to myself a long time ago." There was no triumph in her tone, no bitterness, only peace. Henry stood as well, unsure if he should shake her hand or bow his head. Instead, he whispered, "You became everything I feared, everything I admired." Alicia nodded. "And you became the lesson I'll never need to learn twice." When he left, the door closed with the finality of a chapter ending, not with a bang, but with quiet dignity. Alicia stood on the rooftop of the Alive X Valen launch gala, the city's lights stretching beneath her like stars she could finally touch. Music played below, laughter and flashes of champagne sparkled in every corner. But she stood apart for a moment, taking it in, not as a celebration of victory, but as a moment of presence. Ayanda approached with a glass of sparkling water. "You've done it, eh? Everything they said you couldn't." Alicia smiled. "No, I've done everything I was told I had to give up to stay loved." Her gaze moved to the skyline. "And I'm just getting started." Below, billboards bore her image, not as a symbol of comeback, but as a vision of what self-respect, culture, and innovation could birth when unshackled. Later that evening, she took the mic just briefly. "This isn't about revenge," she said to the crowd. "It's about remembering who you were before someone told you who you should be." The room roared with applause, but Alicia simply bowed her head in thanks. No grand speech. No need for fireworks. She'd already won, because her triumph wasn't in reclaiming what was taken. It was in building something greater with the ashes. As the night drew on, she stood once more by herself, wind in her hair, confidence rooted deep in her spine. She was no longer the wife who'd been replaced, or the executive who'd been erased. She was a woman who disappeared and returned not as a version of her past self, but as an icon of her own design. Alicia lives, and the world would never forget it. Here's the Bible verse. "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." Psalm 118, verse 22. This verse captures the essence of Alicia's journey, rejected, underestimated, yet rising to become the very foundation of greatness. The moral of the story: when others push you aside, don't shrink, rise. You don't need to prove your worth to those who betrayed you. Sometimes, the greatest strength is walking away in silence, rebuilding in secret, and returning with purpose. True success isn't loud or vengeful, It's graceful, undeniable, and rooted in identity, not approval. That's the end of the story. What did you learn from this story? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Leave a like and don't forget to subscribe and turn on post notification so that you'll be notified whenever we drop our next videos. Also, share this video to someone who might be interested. Thank you so much for watching.